I wouldn't have said so, no. Not really. But no, I don't get the feeling that she's wildly optimistic about life. A pragmatist, I think.
The private gathering was meant to be quiet, controlled and sealed away from palace whispers. But the moment Princess Anne saw Camilla's sister standing at the entrance, everything changed. One look was enough. The room froze, the aides stopped moving, and Anne made the decision no one expected. She cancelled the entire gathering before the first private conversation could even begin. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Anne did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her stillness carried more force than anger, and every person in that room seemed to understand that something sacred had been broken. Camilla stood nearby, tense and pale, watching the princess's eyes move from the doorway to the guest list, then back again. Her sister had not stepped far inside, yet her presence had already changed the meaning of the evening. The private gathering, a closed family meeting meant for sensitive royal discussions away from public attention, had depended on trust, and Anne believed that trust had been crossed before anyone had even taken a seat. Camilla felt the blow before a single accusation was spoken. She knew Anne was not reacting to a simple arrival or a harmless mistake. She was drawing a line. Her sister remained at the entrance, caught between confusion and embarrassment, while the aides held their breath, as though one wrong movement might turn tension into open war. Anne had insisted from the beginning that the guest list stay tight. No surprise relatives, no outside advisors, no quiet additions through side doors. That mattered because this meeting was not social. It was built around delicate household questions, the kind that could shape loyalties, control access, and expose cracks nobody wanted the world to see. Then came the moment that sealed it. Anne turned toward the senior aide, her face controlled, her words clean and final. The meeting was over. Not delayed, not adjusted. Over. Camilla looked stunned, but she understood the message instantly. This was not punishment for one person standing at a door. This was Anne, refusing to let the room be changed by someone who had not been cleared to enter it. Her sister lowered her gaze, and the silence around her became sharper than any public scandal. The cancelled gathering became the first thunderclap in a much larger storm. Anne had acted as if she already knew something others did not, as if the sister's arrival confirmed a fear that had been building in private for weeks. Camilla saw the humiliation. Anne saw the warning. And inside the palace, one question began to spread from person to person. Why did Anne believe that woman should never have been there at all? But to understand why one unexpected arrival could destroy an entire evening, the palace first had to face the people caught inside the storm. This was not just about a doorway. It was about loyalty, territory, family, and the invisible walls that protect royal power. Princess Anne saw a boundary crossed. Camilla saw humiliation unfolding in real time. Her sister stood frozen, suddenly aware that her presence had become the spark. And somewhere inside that room, Charles had to confront a truth he had avoided for far too long. Anne had always treated private royal discussions like protected ground. To her, they were not casual family chats, and they were not places where emotions could decide who entered. A private royal discussion means a closed conversation where senior family members speak about sensitive matters before anything reaches staff, press, or public view. That mattered because one wrong person in the room could change what people dared to say. It could make a hard truth softer. It could make a warning disappear. And Anne knew the monarchy had survived many storms because some doors had stayed closed. Camilla felt that judgment land on her before anyone explained it. The queen consort looked from Anne to her sister, and the hurt was immediate. This was family to her, not strategy. This was someone she trusted, someone familiar, someone who had stood beside her through years of public pressure. But Anne did not see comfort in that moment. She saw risk. She saw private influence moving too close to royal decision-making. And she believed even one unapproved presence could shift the balance of the entire gathering. Charles watched with visible discomfort, caught between two kinds of loyalty. The king understood Anne's fear because he knew how fragile the household had become whenever personal relationships touched official duty. But he also saw Camilla's face change, and that wounded him. He wanted to calm the room, yet every second of silence made the damage worse. The monarch knew this was bigger than protocol, the set of rules that guides royal behavior and protects order inside the family. But it was smaller than scandal, which made it harder to confront without looking cruel. William noticed something others missed. The prince saw that Anne did not look shocked by the sisters' arrival. She looked confirmed, as if a warning she had carried quietly had finally stepped into the room with a name and a face. That unsettled him more than the cancellation itself. William watched Anne hold her ground, watched Camilla struggle to keep her dignity, and watched Charles hesitate at the very moment the family needed certainty. The silence began to point backward. Anne's anger had roots. Camilla's embarrassment had history. Charles's discomfort had been building long before this cancelled gathering. And William could feel it. This doorway was not the beginning. It was the return of something hidden, something dressed in polite smiles and careful palace language. And that hidden moment was the real reason Anne's patience finally snapped. Weeks before the cancelled gathering, there had been another private moment. It looked harmless at first. A small family lunch, a quiet toast, a few careful smiles. But one sentence changed the temperature of the room. Princess Anne heard it, remembered it, and never forgot it. From that day forward, Camilla's sister was no longer just a guest. She became a warning sign. Anne had arrived at Clarence House prepared for peace. Clarence House is a royal residence in London, often used for private family meetings. And that mattered, because conversations there could feel softer than palace briefings, but still carry serious weight. Camilla wanted the lunch to feel warm, and her sister moved through the room with easy confidence, as if she belonged near the quiet center of royal life. Charles welcomed the calm because he wanted fewer fractures around him. But Anne watched every word, every smile, every pause, because she knew family comfort could sometimes hide ambition. Camilla's sister lifted her glass and gave the toast that changed everything. She spoke about family voices deserving a place near the crown, and the words landed harder than she seemed to expect. The crown means the monarchy as an institution, not just the person wearing it, and Anne understood that difference instantly. To Camilla, the sentence sounded like affection, a small defense of people who had stood beside her during difficult years. To Anne, it sounded like a request for access, not open power, something quieter, something closer, something that moved through side doors. Anne did not confront her there. She simply set down her glass and let the silence speak for her. Camilla noticed, and the queen consort's face tightened with defense before anyone accused her of anything. Charles tried to move the conversation forward, but the king knew Anne had changed. She was present, polite, and cold. Later, Camilla insisted the toast had been misunderstood, yet Anne's silence made that defense feel weak. The damage had already entered the room, and everyone who understood royal language knew it. William learned the truth later through a documented account prepared by a senior aide, who recorded that Anne had personally asked to review all future private guest lists after that lunch. The prince understood how rare that was. Anne did not chase control for pleasure. She only stepped in when she believed the monarchy's inner walls were being tested. Charles had dismissed the lunch as awkward but harmless, and that dismissal made Anne feel even more alone. So when Camilla's sister appeared at the door weeks later, Anne did not see coincidence. She saw the same warning returning, no longer hidden inside a toast, but standing openly at the edge of a private room. And in that instant, the past and present collided. Anne was not reacting to a single arrival. She was answering a challenge she believed had already been made. The room did not explode. That was what made it worse. Princess Anne stepped toward Camilla with the calm of someone who had already made her decision before anyone could argue. Camilla tried to speak first, but Anne's expression stopped her. The sister remained at the doorway, caught between family loyalty and royal consequence. Then came the confrontation no one could soften. Anne asked the room to clear. The aides moved quickly, but one senior aide stayed back, silent enough to be invisible, and close enough to remember every word. Camilla did not move at first. The queen consort looked toward her sister, then toward Charles, as if searching for one person willing to say this had all gone too far. The king looked torn. He understood why Anne had stopped the gathering, yet he also saw how deeply Camilla had been embarrassed. The sister remained at the threshold, and that mattered, because the threshold, the line between outside and inside, had become the whole argument. Anne spoke first, and every word landed clean. Private royal matters could not become family extensions. A private royal matter means a sensitive decision or discussion kept inside the senior family, because it can affect trust, roles, and future control. That was why this moment hurt so much. Camilla heard the warning beneath the sentence. Anne was not saying her sister was cruel. She was saying her presence changed the room. She was saying love could not be allowed to rewrite access. Camilla's face tightened, and for the first time that evening, the hurt broke through her composure. Camilla answered with quiet force. Her sister had come at her request. Nothing more. No scheme. No hidden plan. Just family. But Anne's disappointment deepened the second she heard it, because that answer confirmed the breach. The queen consort had not misunderstood the rule. She had stepped around it because she believed personal trust was enough. Charles asked for restraint, his voice low, but Anne turned to him with the sharp calm of someone who had carried restraint too long. She said restraint was exactly why she acted before the gathering began. The aide saw Camilla lower her eyes, not in defeat, in recognition. Anne had taken control of the room without anger, without spectacle, without giving anyone space to turn the moment into confusion. Charles felt the weight of it. The king knew this was no longer about one sister standing near one door. It was about who had the right to decide what entered the monarchy's most private spaces. That question changed the entire crisis. Hurt feelings were no longer enough to explain it. Family loyalty was no longer enough to excuse it. Anne had forced the palace to face the colder truth beneath the pain. Power lives in access, and access can never be treated like a favor. Power inside the palace does not always announce itself with crowns or speeches. Sometimes it appears in the movement of a chair, the closing of a folder, or one person refusing to let a meeting continue. Princess Anne had no need to raise her voice. By canceling the gathering, she proved something far more dangerous. She still had the authority to stop the room. Anne stood over the table, as if the argument had already been decided. Her authority did not come from noise. It came from years of discipline, duty, and a refusal to bend royal procedure for personal comfort. Royal procedure means the rules and habits that guide how the family handles sensitive matters, and in this case, those rules protected who could enter a private gathering. That mattered, because the meeting was not about dinner plans or small talk. It involved delicate household control, future access, and private trust. One wrong guest could change the whole balance. Charles felt the trap close around him. The king wanted to protect Camilla from humiliation, but he also knew Anne's conviction could not be brushed aside without making the breach look acceptable. His sister had acted where others had hesitated, and that made his silence feel heavier. Camilla stood nearby, wounded but alert, knowing every word now carried more than family pain. The queen consort understood that if Charles defended her too strongly, he could weaken Anne. But if he backed Anne too clearly, he would leave Camilla exposed. William watched his father closely. The prince saw hesitation in Charles, and that troubled him. A future king learns by watching the moments when power is tested, and William could see that Anne had not simply cancelled an evening. She had taken command of a boundary no one else had dared to guard. The private gathering had become a lesson in control, and the prince understood why it mattered. If access could be changed quietly once, it could happen again. If it happened again, trust would begin to rot from inside. Anne reached for the guest list and placed it flat on the table. She tapped the sister's name once. Not hard, not dramatic, just enough to make everyone look. The name had been added late, and not with her approval. Camilla's expression changed as the meaning settled. Charles looked toward the senior aide, and the aide finally spoke. The change had come through Camilla's office. That single admission made the room colder than any accusation could have. Camilla did not deny it. She could not. The queen consort's pain deepened because the truth now had shape. Anne had not imagined the breach. William saw Charles absorb the blow, and the king seemed to understand that this was no longer a disagreement between two royal women. The cancellation had become something bigger, something sharper, something impossible to hide. By the time the aide finished speaking, the palace had already shifted. Anne had forced the truth into the open. Charles had seen the cost of delay. Camilla had felt the price of misplaced trust. And William had witnessed the moment a private wound became a palace earthquake. The first consequence was not public, it was personal. Camilla retreated into a side room and sat without removing her gloves, staring at nothing as the cancelled gathering echoed through the walls. Charles followed but did not immediately speak. Anne remained outside with the aides, composed and immovable. The monarchy had not cracked in public, but inside the palace, everyone heard the fracture. Camilla felt the humiliation settle slowly. The queen consort knew the official explanation would be soft, careful, and almost meaningless. The private gathering had been postponed, but postponed, in palace language, often means a decision has been stopped without admitting the full reason. That mattered because words protected reputations. They gave the family space to survive a crisis without feeding it to the world. Yet, every aide in the household understood the truth. Anne had cancelled the evening because Camilla's sister had appeared where she was not cleared to be. Charles stood near Camilla and carried a sorrow he could not easily name. The king had seen many hard moments, but this one struck differently because it involved the two women closest to his reign in very different ways. Camilla was his wife, his companion, the person who wanted to feel secure inside the family. Anne was his sister, his sharpest guardian of duty, the person who would wound feelings before she let royal order weaken. Charles wanted to comfort the queen consort, but he also knew Anne had exposed a problem he could not ignore. Anne gave instructions with a calm that unsettled the aides. She told the senior aide that future private family gatherings would require written approval for any late additions. Written approval means a clear signed record showing who allowed a change, and it mattered because memory could be denied, but a record could not. The aide nodded quickly, understanding that the princess was not making a suggestion. Anne was building a wall where she believed a gap had opened. Her control was quiet, but it was absolute. William entered the edge of the crisis with one careful question. The prince asked whether the guest list change had been approved by the king. No one answered clearly. That silence troubled him more than any accusation. If Charles had approved it, the monarchy had a problem of judgment. If he had not, the household had a problem of control. William looked toward Anne and understood why she had moved so fast. The future king had just seen how confusion can become danger when no one owns a decision. The fallout moved through the palace in whispers, phone calls and polished excuses. Camilla sat with hurt pride. Charles carried frustration. Anne remained steady. William remembered the silence. And later, when Anne and Camilla found themselves alone without the king, without aides, and without formal language, the wound finally became human. The turning point did not happen in front of courtiers. It happened in a smaller room, with the doors shut and the noise gone. Princess Anne stood by the mantel, still controlled, still guarded. Camilla entered slowly. No sister beside her, no aide behind her, no husband to soften the moment. For the first time that evening, there was nowhere to hide. Anne did not begin with blame. She waited until Camilla had fully crossed into the silence. Then she spoke like someone who had chosen every word before the door closed. Charles had asked for one final conversation, one last attempt to stop the rupture from becoming permanent. A courtier is a senior palace worker who serves or advises the royal household. And the absence of courtiers mattered here because there would be no one to soften the words or reshape them later. This was not about public rank. This was about trust. Camilla stood alone, and that changed the air between them. The queen consort had no sister beside her now, no king to shield her, no office to explain her decision. She told Anne she had not meant to challenge her. She said the arrival had been personal, not political. But Anne heard the pain beneath the defense, and for the first time that evening, she let the anger loosen slightly. Camilla confessed she felt increasingly isolated inside the family she had married into, surrounded by rules that seemed to tighten whenever she reached for someone familiar. Anne listened, but she did not retreat. The princess admitted she had felt the private walls of the monarchy weakening. That phrase mattered, because those walls were not made of stone. They were made of discipline, silence, and careful access. Anne believed that once personal loyalty began deciding who entered private royal spaces, the whole structure became vulnerable. Camilla lowered her voice and accepted that her sister's arrival had crossed a line. Not because her sister had meant harm, but because the moment had carried the wrong meaning at the worst possible time. Camilla's admission changed Anne more than any argument could have. The queen consort said clearly that personal family loyalty could not override royal boundaries, and Anne's expression softened just enough to show that the words had reached her. Then Camilla agreed to the condition that mattered most. Her sister would not attend future private gatherings unless every senior member approved in advance. Senior members means the core royals involved in major family decisions, and their approval mattered because no one person could quietly open a door again. The humiliation did not disappear. Anne knew Camilla had been wounded. Camilla knew Anne had been right to protect the room. Neither woman pretended the night could be repaired with one conversation. But the private understanding gave the palace a path forward. It allowed the family to face the outside world without denying the truth completely. The wound had become human, and once the palace found its wording, the world outside found its own version of the story. By morning, the private cancellation was no longer private. The story moved from palace corridors to breakfast tables, radio panels, and newspaper stands. One image defined it all: a front page showing a closed royal gate beneath the headline, "Anne shuts the door." In that single phrase, the public understood the drama. This was not gossip. This was a royal boundary drawn in steel. Camilla saw the coverage and felt the wound reopen. The queen consort had known the palace would choose careful wording, but she had not expected the world to reduce the whole night to one doorway and one sister. Palace communications described the gathering as rescheduled, which means officials presented it as moved to another time instead of openly admitting it had been stopped. That mattered, because palace language is often built to protect dignity. It softens conflict. It gives the family room to breathe. But this time, the public heard the softness and guessed the sharp truth beneath it. Anne read the headlines with no sign of victory. The princess had protected the room, but now her decision belonged to everyone. Broadcasters framed the story as a rare clash between Anne's duty-first discipline and Camilla's family loyalties. That mattered because the monarchy depends on both. Duty keeps the institution steady, while family loyalty keeps the people inside it from breaking. But when those two forces collided, the public did not see a private misunderstanding. They saw a battle over who was allowed near power. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace gave the story a face. Buckingham Palace is the monarch's official London residence, and when people gather there, it often turns private royal tension into public feeling. Several people stood near the gates holding newspapers, pointing at the headline, arguing in low voices about whether Anne had saved the monarchy from quiet influence or humiliated the queen consort in front of the nation. Camilla heard about the crowd from an aide and looked away, wounded by how quickly her sister had become a symbol. Anne heard the same account and grew still, carrying the heavy knowledge that discipline had become spectacle. One morning presenter sharpened the moment into a sentence the palace could not ignore. During a live broadcast, he called it, "The clearest sign yet that private royal access is now the fiercest battlefield." The words moved fast because they were simple and brutal. Camilla understood they placed her family under suspicion. Anne understood they placed her judgment under public review. Charles understood they left no room for another soft denial. The palace could no longer treat the matter as a cancelled evening. The public had already chosen its image. A closed gate, a stopped gathering, a sister left at the edge of the room. Behind the headlines, the family had already reached the answer the public was still arguing toward. In the end, the cancelled gathering was not remembered as a simple insult, or a social mistake, or one uncomfortable family misunderstanding. It became something larger. Princess Anne had seen a boundary crossed and chose duty over politeness. Camilla had felt the pain of that choice and accepted the cost. Charles had watched the monarchy demand discipline from the people closest to him. Anne did not celebrate the verdict. She carried it. The palace concluded that her decision would stand, and future private gatherings would follow stricter access rules without exception. A private gathering means a closed meeting between trusted royal figures, away from public attention, where sensitive family matters can be discussed safely. That mattered because trust is not only emotional inside the monarchy, it is structural. If one door can be opened quietly, then every private conversation becomes weaker. Anne understood that better than anyone, and the sadness in her victory made the moment even heavier. Camilla accepted the decision with quiet dignity. The queen consort knew her sister would not be publicly condemned, and that spared the family from turning one painful mistake into open punishment. But the limit was clear. Her sister's role had been narrowed, and future access would depend on approval, not affection. Camilla understood why that mattered, even as it hurt. Her family bond had become a symbol bigger than love. It had become a question of whether personal comfort could stand too close to royal control. Charles privately acknowledged the truth in a recorded conversation with a senior advisor later that evening. The king admitted Anne had done what he could not bring himself to do in the moment. She had protected the institution from emotional confusion. The institution means the monarchy as a working system of duty, rules, and public trust, not just the people inside it. Charles knew that system could be damaged when private feelings blurred official boundaries. He had wanted peace. Anne had chosen protection. And in the end, protection had won. William saw the episode as a lesson he would not forget. The prince understood that future kingship would require compassion, but compassion without boundaries could become weakness. The crown, meaning the monarchy's authority and responsibility, stays stable only when access is guarded carefully. William had watched Camilla suffer, Charles hesitate, and Anne carry the burden of being right. That lesson cut deep, because it showed him the cruel side of leadership. Sometimes the person who protects the family is also the person who wounds it. The verdict was final. Anne's cancellation was not cruelty. It was a warning. Camilla's pain was real, but so was the danger Anne saw. Charles understood the cost. William understood the lesson. The sister at the door had changed everything, not because she meant to break the monarchy, but because her presence revealed how fragile trust becomes when rules are softened by emotion. There was no need for another confrontation. The door had closed, the rule had changed, and the monarchy had chosen discipline over comfort. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.